This is John Paul Ryan coming to you from Tokyo, Japan. This article here is called John Malkovich's Son Among 27 Arrested at Portland BLM Protest After Demonstrators Clashed with Police. The actor's son was arrested for interfering with a peace officer and second-degree disorderly conduct. Let's see what this is about. I know him from Saving John Malkovich, not much more than that, so kind of interesting. And there he is. John Malkovich's son was arrested at a recent Black Lives Matter protest in Portland, Oregon, where police reported being pelted with rocks and other objects. So the police sent a report saying that his son, Lowy Malkovich, 38, was busted on charges of interfering with police officer and disorderly conduct. They didn't say specifically what he did, though. They also said that there was no response to a request for a comment. According to police, a protest began on Friday, September 4th around 9:45 p.m. that made its way to the officers of the Portland Police Association. Out of fear of potential arson threats, officers created a perimeter around the building to prevent protesters from getting inside the property. Police say they stood for 90 minutes as the protesters blocked streets and refused to comply with orders being made over a loudspeaker to allow traffic through the area. However, police say that when rocks, a full beverage can, and water bottles began to fly from the crowd towards officers, the incident commander determined that it was an unlawful assembly and they began to make targeted arrests. And of course, Malkovich's son was one of them. They go on to say that cops are not going to press all kind of charges for like little misdemeanors, things that aren't actually violent and cause destruction. I guess there would just be, too much to prosecute and they just can't do it. For example, trespassing, disorderly conduct, escape is what they say, harassment, stuff like that. I guess they're going to give a pass for the most part because they'd be charging like so many people. I guess it's not quite possible. But, the point of this is Malkovich's son was one of those people probably doing that stuff. So this point here that they make, I really wanted to get into. And, the main point of this article could be focused on this point here. Obviously, it's interesting that, Malkovich's son is involved. There's the title of the article there. But this point they make, I didn't quite think about when I was thinking about these riots and protests and what happens when they get violent. What we're doing is recognizing that the right to speak and have your voice heard is extremely important, Schmidt said. If you're out there committing violence, you're damaging property, those cases are going to be prosecuted. If you're a person who is out there demonstrating and you get caught up in melee, those are the kinds of cases that we're talking about. Now, here's what I'm thinking. Pretty much, when there's a protest that turns violent, that turns into a riot, there's a lot of people involved. It's a mess. And if you have to defend yourself from violence, rightfully, it's hard to tell looking in who started that violence and who's defending and who's attacking. So even though you're at a protest, so to speak, or a riot you could say, and you're not being violent, you might have to defend yourself. And somebody who's watching that defense coming in from the middle won't actually be able to tell every time who started it. And you might say, well, I was defending myself, I got arrested, this and that. However, unfortunately, it's such a mess and there's such chaos, there's no good way to tell who the defender is, who the attacker is, so you're going to get lumped in with the people doing the violent protest. So Toastmaster says, starting to see a pattern of wealthy entitled white kids who are being radicalized, aren't you, MSM? Maybe. I don't know. The thing about privilege came up on some podcasts, things like that, and it seems like the real privilege is the financial and the social privilege as far as money, not necessarily color of skin. Dave Chappelle said, I got pulled over, but they let me go. I shouldn't have to be Dave Chappelle to be let go by the cops. He was kind of hinting at, well, if I was like just a regular black guy, maybe they would do something bad. But it's not really color of skin. The cop let him go because he's rich. It's not like a rich black guy and a rich white guy get pulled over and the black guy gets put in jail. They both get let go because they're rich. If it's an Indian guy who's rich, he usually gets let go because he's rich. Chinese, Mexican, whatever. It's pretty much privilege comes from money. That's the main thing. So entitled white kids I guess so, but you could flip that around with any other color because it's pretty much entitled kids who are rich, basically. I could be wrong. This guy says, dude, you have failed in your life if you are BLM, Antifa, rioting, looting, burning, and vandalizing. And I gotta make a serious point for that, is that if you're out doing that stuff, you're not working. You're not going to school. You're not getting an education towards something that's going to be useful. You're out rioting. I mean, I guess it could be like on the weekends or on your free time or something, but not for everybody. Some people are actually away from their job, not in classes in college, to go out and riot or protest. So one of the main problems that a lot of conservatives point out, who happen to be black, are education. Like Larry Elder. He points out education is a main factor in all this. And if education was right, then we'd have a lot less problems. Anyway, you guys let me know what you think down below. I couldn't help but notice this picture right here has been there. It's not me. It's just on the website. I didn't plan that. It's not the worst picture. Just saying. And on a side note, I made a post here, a community post about getting political, and I'm not going to take sides. I'm not going to take a presidential side, a candidate side, but I'm going to start talking about things that are a little bit more out of the range that I usually talk about, because there's so much going on and there's so many stories to cover in the world that I'm not going to limit myself just to Depp Heard or other celeb stuff. That's the main thing here. I think it will always be, but I really don't have any set format that I have to abide by. So I'm going to start covering, stuff like this. And I'll pitch in my opinion, but it's going to be, pretty middle of the road. Common sense, how things could work better for everybody. And if I see something wrong on one side, I'll call it out. I'm all about logic, rationality, and what makes sense. And historically, I'm against social justice warriors, woke stuff, things like that. So being called racist, sexist, doesn't really go by with me. And that's going to be called out. And we've got similar things going on here as we have for 4 years in the entertainment industry, in Hollywood. So it feels like all over again, but now in the government, in society, not just in movies and entertainment. So obviously, I'm going to be on the side of the common sense and against social justice warriors for the most part. And there are good SJWs. What I mean by that is people who are actually fighting for rights for people who don't have them, not for people who are looting and breaking into Nike stores and Apple stores and things like that, and probably pandering to a certain side they don't care about so much. If you subscribe here, it'll be pretty good. You'll get videos, stuff like that. If you don't subscribe, that'll be pretty sad, but I'll get over it. See you next time.